Okay, hi everybody. We are getting everyone in the rooms. Yo, look at this turnout. Fantastic. Just give it a little few more moments here. I see the numbers still creeping up. Awesome. Okay, I think I can safely get started. All right. Welcome everybody. I'm Michelle Jewell. I'm from NC State's Department of Applied Ecology, based here in Raleigh, North Carolina in the US. And this is Fermentology. It's our mini seminar series on the culture, the science, and the history of daily fermented foods. And we've had guests from all over the planet literally join us on a semi-weekly basis since April. And recordings from all those talks are available on our YouTube page. Today I'm joined by several friends and colleagues for our extremely special talk with the one and only Vivian Howard. But before I turn it over to them, I want to mention that, as always, we will be having a live Q&A at the end of the talk. So please, as you have questions, just go ahead and throw them in the chat, either in Zoom or on YouTube, and I'll be monitoring those. And I apologize in advance, I won't be able to get to absolutely everybody's questions, so sorry about that. So without any further ado, let me pass the virtual mic over to my dear friend, Max. Max, take it away.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi there, everybody. My name is Max. I'm Program Manager for Learning Philosophy and Evaluation at the Museum of Life and Science in Durham, North Carolina. So first of all, thank you so much to Michelle. Thank you to Quail Ridge, and of course, thank you to Applied Ecology for having us co-host this event. We are really excited about it. And Rebecca, I'm looking forward to hearing from you in just a second. There's sort of a long-time listener, first-time caller feeling here because I'm a big fan of the Fermentology series. If this is the first one that you're tuning in for, gosh, lucky you. There is a great long archive of recorded mini seminars for you to enjoy after this one. If you, like me, have been rethinking your relationship with cooking while social distancing and quarantining, then I think you'll find them both edifying and very practically useful. The Museum of Life and Science is so happy to co-host this event because we think now is an important time for clear, effective, and new ways of communicating science. For those of you still at home with kids around, still trying to find the joy in cooking, I think this program will be really special for you. I'm sure you'll hear more about this from my friend Vivian here in just a second, but fermentation projects are a wonderful way of doing both whole family hands-on science learning, yes, even with young children, and making delicious things together. And what could be better than that? I hope you'll find this afternoon's mini seminar inspiring and empowering to take on these projects with your own kids in your own kitchens back at home. If and when you're ready for more whole family learning, the Museum of Life and Science is here to support that journey, just as we have been for the last 74 years. You can learn more about us at lifeandscience.org, and you can learn more about how you can continue to engage at home at lifeandscience.org/at-home. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Rebecca from Quail Ridge.
Hey everyone, as Max said, I'm Rebecca from Quail Ridge Books. If you've attended any of our virtual events that we've been hosting during the pandemic, you probably already know my face, but if you haven't, what are you waiting for? We definitely miss hosting our author events in our store, but as you'll see today, every seat at a virtual event is a front row seat, so they're definitely worth checking out, and we've got a growing calendar of events for November, and I'm happy to pop a link to our events calendar in the chat so that you guys can check that out. I'm sure you've already heard lots since the beginning of the pandemic about shopping local and supporting local, but I do just want to remind you that that is so important, especially now. Quail Ridge Books hasn't been around quite as long as the Museum of Life and Sciences, but we have been around in the Raleigh community for 36 years now. And we're able to do that because we have amazing customers who continue to support us with their business. So thank you for all of our Quail Ridge customers out there. If you haven't shopped at Quail Ridge Books, now is a great time to start. We love connecting our customers with their favorite authors, especially those that are from North Carolina, like Vivian Howard, who is somewhere wandering around there. We actually just did a safe, socially distanced drive-through event with Vivian where she got to meet a lot of her fans. That was so awesome. So we love partnering with people like her. We did a lot of events when her first cookbook came out, but now she's got a second one that she is promoting called This Will Make It Taste Good. And if y'all have not picked that up yet, Vivian signed so many copies. And of course, signed books make great holiday gifts. So I am going to drop a link in the chat for you if you're on Zoom, and maybe Michelle can get it over to you on YouTube. That will take you right to a copy of This Will Make It Taste Good. You can purchase it online. If you are not local to North Carolina, we are currently offering free media mail shipping, so don't worry about that. You can still get a signed copy. If you are local, we would love to see you come in the store. We're open 10 to 7 Monday through Saturday and 10 to 6 on Sundays. And I'm going to hand it back to my friend Max to kick us off.
Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, I'm really looking forward to learning with y'all, so let's go ahead and get on with the show. Vivian Howard is a chef, author, and PBS personality from Deep Run, North Carolina. She owns 2 restaurants in North Carolina and currently calls this state her home, and she focuses on the ingredients and cooking traditions of Eastern North Carolina. Like Rebecca just told us, she has a brand new book out called This Will Make It Taste Good, A New Path to Simple Cooking. I'm going to let you do a better job of introducing yourself than I can. So without further ado, Vivian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I feel as if I may be talking to a group of fermentology nerds or experts. And so I hope that I'm not coming at you ill prepared. I do a little bit of fermenting, but I love fermented food and drinks. And today we're going to be talking about kraut. And what's really interesting is that I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. I moved away. I came back. I opened a restaurant in this small town here called Kinston. And I was maybe 28 years old, and I had dreams of being, a respected cutting edge chef. And at that time, when we moved back to Eastern North Carolina, we'd been here about a year, all the chefs I respected were talking about this book by Sandor Katz, The Art of Fermentation. And so obviously I got the book. I was reading it. One morning I woke up, I went to my front doorstep in Jones County, and I opened the door, and there was this bag of like dark green leaves floating in a milky liquid. And I'm like, what is this? My dog wouldn't even get near it. And so I called my dad, he's the person I call whenever Eastern North Carolina asks me a question I can't answer. And I'm like, someone is playing a prank on us. They have put something entirely disgusting on our front doorstep. I described it to him. He's like, Vivian, that's not a prank. That's a gift. It's collard kraut. And so my little arrogant chef brain, who thought only good things happened in New York City and nothing smart happened here. That's what I thought at the time. Just that brain was blown to think that I was going to bed reading Sandor Katz's The Art of Fermentation book to learn this cutting edge technique. But these old folks down the road from me were making kraut with collards. So that was kind of my first, introduction into, I guess, the fermentation world of Eastern North Carolina. And since then, I have come to love kraut of all kinds as essentially an ingredient in my cooking. And my new book, This Will Make It Taste Good, is a book about 10 chapters of quintessential flavor heroes, ingredients that I call on in my cooking. And one of those is kraut. And the name of the chapter is actually Can Do Kraut. And I'm posing like Rosie the Riveter at the opening of this chapter, because this is a really fun book, but also because I want to encourage, just the average home cook to make kraut at home, because I think that, fermenting something is a process that you can follow, that you can share with your family. And It's something that you can dictate the taste you want from it. It keeps forever. It's so incredibly healthy. I mean, the reasons, the lists to make kraut are endless. So the way that we're going to go about this today is I generally start any kraut that I make with cabbage, green cabbage. Cabbage is, I think, one of the most unsung heroes of the kitchen. It has a very long shelf life. It has a lot of fiber and nutrients. It's filling. You can eat it raw. You can eat it fermented. You can eat it cooked. I mean, it's so incredibly versatile. So, and it's crunchy, which is one of the reasons I like it for kraut. So you can make kraut, which is essentially a fermented pickle, with really any crunchy vegetable. But I think that cabbage has a nice baseline flavor that carries the flavors of other ingredients. So I always start my kraut with cabbage. So I have my food processor here, and it has that shredder blade. And back in the day, when Vivian was reading Sandra Katz's book and dreaming about it being a renowned chef, I would have used my knife and probably made a million different little knife cuts to have fancy kraut. But Vivian today is using her food processor. And she's trying to use her food processor. Here we go. All right. So I've already, because I've done this a few times, I've already processed most of my cabbage. But what I'm going to do is about 2 pounds of vegetables. So you've got 2 pounds of, well, I've got about 1.5 pounds of cabbage here that I've shredded. And whenever you're making kraut, I think it's really important, if you can, if the leaves are of quality, to use the outside leaves as well, the ones that you might not use if you were making, slaw or sauteing cabbage, because those outer leaves, they have a dark green color and they add a nice, they make your kraut prettier. So I happen to have some tatsoi here, which is it's in the cabbage family, but my farmer friend Warren grows this tatsoi, and it's so juicy and kind of like spinachy with a little bit of an edge. It's got a nice like crunchy stalk, and it's going to add some dimension and also some nice color to my kraut. I'm going to also put this through the food processor. So when I went and made collard kraut with my neighbors who gave me that gift, they didn't chop their collards at all. They actually put whole leaves in a big barrel and layered the leaves, and over every layer they put a smattering of salt. And then they pounded the layers with this big mallet thing. And so I tell you that to tell you that there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to ferment vegetables. And this is just one way. It's a way that I find to be really simple at home. So I was part of this show on PBS this spring, which I'm really proud of. It's called Somewhere South. And we had a pickle episode where we explored different pickling methods all around the South. And we went to Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, and made chow chow. And we went, I cooked with some of my Southeast Asian friends, and we made all sorts of achar and pickles. And when the episode aired, which happened to be during COVID, I decided that I was going to make kraut with my children on social media. And I thought it would be great because kraut is something that, these steps are things that kids enjoy. And I'll get to one of them in just a second. And this particular Instagram story went incredibly well. In fact, I thought, this is like, I'm going to have my kids doing this more. And well, time went by and we did not do that. And then a couple weeks ago, I did a virtual book event with my kids and we made kraut again. And all hell broke loose. And I think it's because they knew what they were doing when it came to the kraut part of things. And so they decided that they were going to show off. And so that's why they're not here today. I think the third time they would probably just tear this whole place down. All right. So I have got my tatsoi that's been ground, and I'm going to fold that into my cabbage. Again, you could use your knife. You could even do this with whole leaves. It'll take longer the bigger the particle size. It'll take longer to ferment, but that's okay. Okay, so my ratio for making kraut is about 2 pounds of vegetables to 2 teaspoons of sea salt, pickling salt, or kosher salt. Two things. Do not use iodized salt, which y'all probably all know that because you've been fermenting. So 2 teaspoons to my 2 pounds of vegetables. So I think this is a very basic flavor profile. I'm just simply fermenting cabbage and tatsoi. You could certainly add any number of vegetables you want. You could do beets, you could do kohlrabi, turnips, rutabaga, onion. You could add spices if you like. I don't do any of that because, as you're going to see in a minute, I really like to use my finished kraut in a lot of different dishes. And I find that when you add really distinct flavors or spices to your kraut, then the kraut becomes the star and becomes less useful. You can't put it in as many things. So I like to make my kraut basic and plan to add the aromatic ingredients later. All right, so I've mixed that salt in, and I've got this mallet that my friend Lynn Atkins made for me, and I'm just gonna pound the kraut. This is something you'll see when people make fermented pickles of any kind. You have to bruise the cellular wall to get everything started. This is one of the reasons this is great for kids, because not only my kids are 9, they can work this food processor. Just make sure that you watch them. They can also measure the salt, stir the cabbage, and then pound the cabbage. And the rest of the steps are perfectly manageable for them too. And this is a kitchen project that does not involve heat. It's a kitchen project that continues to evolve, and you get to follow it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a science project. All right, so I'm gonna pound, and I'm using this fancy mallet, but you could use a wine bottle, a rolling pin, anything. I mean, you get the picture. All right, so I'm gonna let this hang out for about 15 to 20 minutes, and it's gonna start to leach out its water, and the water combined with the salt is going to make its very own brine. And excuse me, a glass of water. I'm a little bit under the weather, but it's not COVID. But I feel like I should tell you that. If any of y'all know me, I don't sound like I normally do. But I can do it. Can do kraut. All right. So this has been sitting for about 15 minutes, and you can see that it's shrunk. It's given up some liquid. it's darkened in color. And so now I'm ready to pack it into whatever I'm gonna ferment it in. And I think that a lot of people don't think that at-home fermentation is for them because they think they have to buy a bunch of gadgets to make it happen, or they think that it's going to be really easy to do something wrong, and that's just not been my experience at all. Making kraut in a restaurant setting, often we'll put the cabbage that's been rubbed with the salt and a Lexan and put a sheet pan on top of that. So I'm going to show you how to put it in these jars or in a bowl with a weight. It does not have to be the perfect earthenware crock for you to make kraut. Okay, so I'm going to, which one should I pick? Let's pick this one. Okay, so I'm going to take this quart jar and just cram my kraut in here. This is really important that you get as much in there as you can. My basic kraut recipe is 1 medium head of cabbage and 1 large English cucumber. And I find that particular measurement fits, once it's pounded, fits in 2 of these quart jars. And I always think before I have pounded it, I'm like, it's never gonna fit in here. It's another thing my kids enjoy, this part. Pushing it down, you can see it's already giving up quite a bit of liquid. All right, so if you were to put it in this bowl, for instance, you would just need to put it in the bowl, put a plate on top that was about the diameter of the bowl, and then put a weight on top of that plate. So you can put a jar with water in it. You can put a paper weight on top of that. But the point is that you just want to weight the vegetables down below the developing brine. So a couple years ago, I got this cool kit on Amazon. I'm pretty sure I Googled fermentation kit. And it was just this weight, which is basically like a paperweight, but it fits perfectly inside a jar like this. And it was also this little nipple thing that covers the jar, keeps anything, unwanted out of it, but also lets air escape. If you don't have these 2 little gadgets, there's a lot of other options, and I've been known to do all kinds of wild things. So you could fill this little jar with water, put its lid on it, put it right there. A lot of times when I don't have this situation, I will cover the top with cheesecloth and secure it with a rubber band or twine or whatever. You could use a dishcloth. The point is the kraut needs to breathe. It doesn't need to run in the wind or anything, but it needs to be able to breathe, and it needs to be weighted down below the brine. So what I like to do when I'm at this stage is put the kraut in a place that my family and I pass by every day, but that is not in a window. I have made kraut before and put it in a cabinet just to get out of the way, and then find it far too late for anybody to enjoy it. So I like to put it somewhere that we pass by a lot, so that as a family we can check it out, smell it, taste it, and most importantly, don't forget about it. And as in about 12 hours, you could check it, and the brine should have definitely come over top the kraut and maybe even over top the weight. If that has not happened, and you find that your kraut is there's not enough brine to make the kraut, to submerge the kraut. You can mix a solution of 2 teaspoons salt and 1 cup of water and pour that on top of here. You don't want to pour straight water. You need to create a brine, but it does need to be submerged. I get a lot of questions about, if there's a little bit of mold or fuzz on top of my kraut as it's developing, what do I do? The answer is, if it's a very thin layer and it's a part of while the kraut is developing, just scoop that off and throw it away. I usually start tasting my kraut after about 4 days, because the interesting thing from a chef's perspective is that when we think of fermented foods, we think of the most fermented product. Like, it's got to be funky, it's got to be like in your face. But there's all different levels within that spectrum. 4 days in, this tastes like a bright porky pickle. 8 to 10 days in, it tastes like more robust and funkier. And then 15 days in, it's that full level funk that I think we associate with fermented foods. But what I want you to know is that even on day 2, this tastes different. It has different qualities. It has acid, it has salt, it has brightness, it has crunch. And those things just develop through the fermenting process until some of them start to level out and other things take over. But this is, kraut is not a beginning and end process. I like to taste it all along the way and use it for the things that it is most useful for at that stage. I know that these fermentology seminars, you're learning a lot about the how to do this. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the why you should do it. And I think we all understand fermented foods to be really good for our gut, good for our health, good for a hangover. But I don't think that we necessarily think of how to cook with them. And that's kind of what my book is about in this chapter. This chapter shows you how to make kraut, the ways that you can, kind of pack it if you don't have certain equipment, a lot of no-brainer ways to use it, and then a bunch of recipes that once you have your kraut, what you should do with it. This is my eating a pickle sickle. I don't know if any of you have had pickle sickles in your past, but I used to go to this roller rink in Kinston, and they sold pickle sickles, which was leftover pickle juice they just froze. And that was my favorite thing to get. And so we make that with kraut juice. Here's some kraut that is finished. I'm gonna get it for it. It is so interesting. My daughter's like kind of a super taster. And when she tasted this, this pickle sickle, she said, "It tastes like wine." All right, that's so smart. So this is kraut that we've taken to the end spectrum. It's fully fermented, fully funky. It smells, it's the whole room smells like it. So this is an omelet that has kraut and Swiss cheese inside, and the kraut gives it like a nice texture and a brightness. And there's also poppy seeds on top. So consider kraut with eggs. Kraut on avocado toast. We're always looking for something a little crunchy on top of the avocado toast, always looking for acid on top of it. Think of kraut in that way. Kraut and apples is really a very, sorry, someone's calling my computer. It'll stop. Kraut and apples is a classic European combination. And in this, oh my gosh, sorry. Thank you, sorry. So the kraut gets folded into these pancakes and cooked there, and then you have the texture and the brightness and the funk that they bring, and then it's topped with fried apples. And this is one of my favorite recipes in the book. It's called Dinner for Pregnant People, because when I was pregnant, I craved pickles. Well, I craved chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A with extra pickles on them and baked potatoes. And so this is kind of a reimagination of that. It's chicken that's roasted with baked potatoes and kraut is underneath it. So I take this kraut, put it underneath a chicken and roast the chicken, and it cooks the kraut and the chicken juices, and it's amazing. Putting kraut juice in a Bloody Mary. This is my kids' favorite kraut dish. It's macaroni hot dish. It's basically macaroni, ground beef, cheese, broccoli, and kraut. And I've made it with and without the kraut, and they prefer it with the kraut because they say it just tastes a little bit better. And I can tell you why. Because in this dish, there's a lot of really heavy, rich flavors. The beef, the cheese, the macaroni, and the kraut, it just like hides in there and adds balance in the form of acid and texture. So it's a great way to hide this in your food. Using kraut in a salsa on burritos. Any kind of like creamy soup, like a chowder. You know, I feel like we all love chowders. You know, when it gets cold outside, there's something really comforting. But I find that when I get to the bowl of my chowder, I'm really over it. And folding a little bit of kraut into a chowder as it simmers adds that brightness and that acidity, that funkiness that something like this I think actually needs. So I love kraut and steak together. I love a steak salad. So tossing kraut into a salad dressing and having it on a steak salad makes that steak taste so much better, because what kraut brings, what a lot of fermented foods bring, is balance, acidity, and texture. It's one of my favorite ingredients in the kitchen. I hope you'll have some questions. I've been staring at just the photo of Mike, and it's just this tiny little photo in the middle of the screen. So I hope there's somebody out there. I could have been talking to no one.
He's a great photo to stare at. We'll give it to you. It's totally fine, Vivian. I have tons of questions if you don't mind, but I'll only pick a handful. First off, I just wanted to say that little glass weight that you showed for your kraut jar, Sandor uses the exact same weight.
Oh!
In his krauts as well. So you're more on the same wavelength than you think. Yeah.
Right on.
So I've several kraut questions. If you're going to be using collards, is there any difference to your preparation?
No, you know, I think that when I mentioned that my neighbors, they used whole leaves and they layered the kraut with salt rather than what I did, pounding it. I think that just demonstrates that there's more than one way to do this. What I would do, however, is I would do it in the food processor, because I do think it'll happen faster and just be overall a more useful end product for you.
Mm-hmm. And once you've got your kraut blend going, how long is your fermentation process? Or do you find that there are different points in time where you get different tastes out of it?
Right. Well, that's what I was speaking about. You know, I think that many people think that fermented foods have a beginning and then they're done at a certain point. But I really enjoy the variety of flavors that you get throughout the fermenting process. I mean, one of my favorite ways and times to eat this is 3 days in. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't necessarily have the funkiness, but it's taken on an acid, and it's actually become crunchier, and it's brighter than citrus at that stage. So while it's like starting to ferment, I wouldn't call it like, you know, kraut at that point. But that's one of the reasons it's so fun to make kraut with kids, is because, you know, you can taste it on day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and really see how it changes. You know, the amount of time it's going to take it fully mature also depends on the temperature in the room where you're storing it. But I personally prefer kraut within like a 12 to 13 day span. But that's not to say that's when it's done. It's my personal taste, because again, I like to cook with it. I use it in a lot of dishes, so I find if it's, you know, fully mature, fully ripe, it becomes the thing that you focus on in the dish rather than an ingredient in the dish.
Mm-hmm. And so what point, when you're talking about having a 12-day, 13-day kraut, is that still being stored on the counter? Or is that gone into the fridge? What's your storage situation like?
About 10 days on the counter, and then I will put it in the fridge like this. And then once it tastes as I want it to, and it's in the fridge, then I'll take this situation off and put a traditional lid on. And at that point, you know, it keeps for several months in your fridge, just like that, as long as you keep it submerged in its brine. And that's the beauty. I think another reason people are so afraid to do this is because they think they've got to get out their hot water bath canner and do all these, you know, ancient things, but, you know, really you're preserving it. So it lasts a long time, and you don't have to put it in your in a jar. You do need to keep it in your fridge once it's fermented.
Right. And have you run into a vegetable yet? A kraut that hasn't quite done the magic for you?
I've run into a lot of krauts on restaurant menus that are not krauts, and a lot of kimchis that are not kimchis. They're trying to achieve the same thing with a quick pickling run. But no, you know, I enjoy the taste of almost all the ones I've had, and I find it really refreshing, you know, just out of hand. And, you know, on days like today when I'm a little bit under the weather, I think this does as much for me, and maybe it's just in my head, but I think this does as much for me as, you know, Mucinex.
Yeah.
Not that I take that, but
yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, and I mean, Sandra's written about that as well, right? The healing properties of various fermented vegetables and whatnot. So yeah, I think everybody's on the same line with that. But with that, Vivian, I don't want to keep you. I'm so grateful for your time.
Thank you.
We're so grateful for your expertise as well. I hope you feel better for sure.
I feel great. I mean, I'm fine.
And yeah, I just again want to thank my friends and colleagues here who joined us as well, Rebecca and Max, and everybody who tuned in. We have around 300 people watching right now, and probably another 1,000 people watch a recording later. So we've got people from everywhere, France and all sorts of other, even as far away as Apex. Where is that? I don't even know. So thank you again, Vivian. Really appreciate your time, and we'll see all the fermentologists next time.
Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.